box. But yeah, we've hit record, so let's get started. Welcome everybody, first and foremost, to the MDXworks pop-up webinar series. Today's session is around applying for graduate schemes, as you know. We've got myself and my colleague who will be co-presenting the session and talking you through the graduate schemes and some tips for applications and a bit more. First and foremost, my name is Jack Timms. I'm the engagement manager for MDXworks, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hello, I'm Wendy Sale. I'm the Graduate Employability Advisor working alongside Jack Timms.
Brilliant, thanks Wendy. So yeah, Wendy and I will be leading the session today. So any questions you've got, pop them in the chat and one of us will be keeping an eye on that anyway. But we'll also, as I say, reserve some time at the end to pick up some dedicated questions that you have about graduate schemes or anything else for that matter. Just to talk you through what today is going to look like. So in the first instance, for those who may not have had any dealings with MDXworks before, want to talk you through who we are, what the Careers and Employability Service can do. It's a lot more than help you apply for graduate schemes. So we're going to talk you through some of the resources and support on offer throughout your time at Middlesex. Also going to introduce you to MDXworks.com, which is our online career centre, where you'll be able to apply for graduate opportunities, source graduate roles, and also access a real wide range of resources, which we have available to help you with career decision making, job search activity, and a whole lot more. Then we're going to get into the main part of the session. So talk about graduate schemes. What are they? Where do you find graduate schemes? How do you apply for them? Are there any specific entry requirements that employers are dictating around graduate recruitment? And then we're going to talk to you around some tips for applications. So what are the really important things to be doing if you are to secure a place on a grad scheme? Because they are quite a lengthy application process and recruitment process as a whole, and we'll need to help you with those steps. So we'll talk some tips. Then Wendy's also going to talk through some current schemes that are available and some deadlines that we've got coming up for a number of those schemes, which have already been shared in an email with our final year students. You may have seen those already. Deadlines are coming up fast for some of them. So if you want to apply, we can obviously tell you how we can support in terms of next steps. And then we're just going to touch on a bit about LinkedIn as well, because LinkedIn is such an important resource now for all students and graduates in terms of looking for job opportunities. So we'll talk about LinkedIn and how that can be an extra resource to help you when it comes to applying for grad roles and graduate schemes and beyond. So yeah, let's kick off. Wendy's going to join me as and when. I'll kick off in terms of introducing the service, and then yeah, Wendy, feel free to jump in at any moment. We'll keep this nice and relaxed for everyone. So yeah, if you haven't heard of MDXworks, this is who we are. So the Careers and Employability Service, the fancy title is MDXworks, and our aim is really this: it's to support you with preparing for a whole host of opportunities that exist beyond your degree program. What we're really keen to do as a service is to ensure that your career decision making isn't simple really, and you have access to lots of resources and knowledge and learning to help you put it all together and make a conscious decision around what you want to do in the future. And what we're here to do is provide a team who support you with that process, because it isn't easy. We want you to be sure about your own abilities, your own interests, your own talents, passions, and aspirations. And we want to help you with articulating that experience and what you want to do in the future when it comes to meeting with employers. When it comes to applying for graduate roles and graduate schemes in particular, you have to know yourself and you have to know the type of career you want to secure and be very passionate about that. And we as a team are here to help you to unlock that potential. So as you can see on the screen, we offer tailored support, advice and guidance. We work with students one-to-one and through workshops to really drill into the support that we can give you in terms of looking for graduate roles, placements, part-time work experience, or also just looking at what you can do with your degree program. We also offer employability support, so things like writing your CV, your cover letter, delivering mock interviews, pretty much anything related to career and job search activity, we're here to help you. So how do we do it? I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you can see, there's a real wide range. I've mentioned some of them already. And guidance, which we offer through appointments. As we all know, everyone's working online, so we offer those one-to-one appointments through telephone and Zoom and video calls at the moment. But we also have a dedicated email inbox service where you can email any queries to our team and we'll pick those up. The big part of our service is we have dedicated faculty employability advisors for each of our schools on campus. So if you're studying a specific program, you will have a dedicated advisor who is relevant to your department at minimum. We have an advisor for each of the schools, as I said, and they're there to support you with sector-specific knowledge, information, advice, and guidance. So all you need to do is reach out to MDXworks and you can book a one-to-one appointment with your faculty employability advisor. They will have links with industry, they will have knowledge about what trends are emerging within different sectors, and they'll certainly know how to support you in relation to securing a career in that chosen sector. So really important to reach out and work with your faculty employability advisor, whatever year of study you're in at Middlesex.
If I can just jump in. Sorry, if I can just jump in. By virtue of the fact that we have quite a few participants here, and you're clearly invested in thinking about graduate schemes and graduate roles when you graduate, it's really important that you do make the time to register with the site and to see your FEA for that one-to-one support. That is going to really enhance anything you do. And it's a case of being organised and making the time for yourself. You're spending a lot on this degree and you want to make it work at the other end. So do find the time to register, to see your FEA, to do all those things, to invest in your own future.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, they can support you with anything really, all the way from CV to interview to applying for an opportunity, exploring what options relate to your degree. Having someone to kind of act as a soundboard there is really, really useful. And that can be an appointment in itself. If you want to look at further study opportunities, we can obviously support you there, but hoping that because you're on the grad scheme webinar today, you're going to be applying for graduate opportunities. And yeah, in terms of what we would usually offer, usually campus-wide events, which we have at the moment. We're trying to replicate everything online. Some of you may have seen that we delivered the Gradstock Careers Festival at the start of October, and we'll be looking to deliver more of those events as we go on throughout this academic year, along with our skills for employment workshops like webinars and pop-up sessions, which will likely try to involve a lot of our employer partners in as well. If you're looking for part-time work on campus, we also have a Unitemps branch, which offer all paid part-time work opportunities. And again, many of those roles have now shifted online, where you can still earn the London living wage and work for Middlesex University as a student ambassador or a course representative or a whole lot more. So Unitemps is another resource that you have at your disposal through MDXworks and our careers service. As I said, if you want to book an appointment, you can do so. On screen, you'll see that we've got a website, we've got a telephone number, we've got an email address. Reach out to us any way you like. You can connect through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you get in touch with us by any means, we'll be coming back to you to pick up any requests and any support needs that you may have. So we will be sharing the slides after the session today, so all of this information will be able to be accessed through mdxworks.com. But if you did want to make a note of any of those things now, you're more than welcome to. Wanted to just talk very briefly about MDXworks.com. So MDXworks.com is our online careers center and employability portal. It's about a year old now, but we're still finding lots of new resource and ability and competence with the actual career center in comparison to an old one that we had, which some of you may have seen if you're in your final year. MDXworks.com has pretty much everything related to your career and job search needs. So if you're looking for a job opportunity or a graduate scheme, we advertise all of our graduate roles and internships and work experience and placements across a range of industries through our dedicated jobs board. So do keep an eye on there, because many of the schemes that we'll talk about today will also be on MDXworks.com. And it's really like a one-stop shop for finding opportunities whilst you're at Middlesex. We also publish all of our events on the website. So things like today's pop-up webinars, they're going to be advertised every week or so. So you'll see new ones popping up. So if you have attended today and hopefully you've enjoyed the session, you think, well, I want to maybe go to another one in the future around something different. We're hosting them every week, every Tuesday and Thursday. And there's a whole host of different topics that we'll be covering during that period. The resources section is fantastic. So I can't speak highly enough. If you're looking for a guide or a template or a how-to kind of material in relation to writing a CV, preparing for interview, attending an assessment centre, looking for a part-time job, finding work experience. We've got pretty much everything covered in the resource bank. So if you're just looking for some general advice and guidance around job search and career planning, have a look through our resources. You might have to do quite a few clicks because some of them are quite hidden because there's so much fantastic content on there, but do have a look through those resources, and because lots of those things will help you with those questions that you may ask us in the first instance. What we want to do when we see you for a one-to-one appointment a lot of the time is really drill into the detail of who you are and what you want to do in the future. And you can tell us, well, I've already looked through all of the resources and these are the questions that I've got based on those things. So have a little look through. There's dedicated panels for each of the programs again. So if science and technology has a certain area, arts and creative industries another, and you'll be able to find some dedicated and more tailored resource available to look at as well. If you haven't already signed up to mdxworks.com, this is just a very quick guide to how to do it. So it's really simple. When you enter mdxworks.com for the first time, you'll see that there's a sign up button as a new user. Don't try and log in with your MDX details, because that won't actually allow you in unless you've signed up. It's because it's a relatively new platform, you'll need to complete a sign up in the first instance, and that can be with either an MDX email address or your personal email address.
I have in the chat box shared a link on YouTube, just a little quick tutorial how to sign up to MDXworks, just to give you an overview.
Brilliant, thanks Wendy. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff, and I hope we're going to see it as fun. What is a graduate scheme? So graduate schemes get mentioned very often, and I think often they are mentioned interchangeably between what's a graduate job, what's a grad scheme, what's the difference between just a normal job and all of those things. And I think this here encapsulates really and summarizes quite simply what a graduate scheme is. So a graduate scheme is a structured training program. So that's run by an employer to develop future leaders of their organization. The programs themselves are usually between 1 and 2 years, although many are actually a little bit longer than that, and are often available in specific specialisms. So as you can see here, you've got finance, retail, HR, marketing, management, law, and they could all constitute a graduate scheme. A graduate job is different to a graduate scheme in a sense that the graduate job, there may not be any associated training and a structure to it. It may just be a job that you secure, which is a graduate level, but it's something that you will be doing, as a permanent role within the organization. Graduate schemes aren't actually permanent roles. They're 2 to 3 years or maybe a little bit longer. And at the end of that, the aim is that you will be offered a permanent position within the organization, hence that they're looking to train you within that period as a future leader in the organization that you've applied to. The start dates for the programs, as a result, happen kind of annually. So they take an annual intake of new graduates into the organization. So you would apply, for example, now, and September to now usually, when the scheme's open, and you won't start that role until you finish your course and you graduate, usually the following August, September, October time. So they're very specific is what I would say in terms of what is a graduate scheme. If you want to apply for a graduate job, which was advertised now, the likelihood is they're looking for someone to take that job now. Whereas a graduate scheme, they know that you'll be starting next year and they're looking to recruit from final year students who will be finishing their program in the next year. And similarly, any 2020 graduates, for example, it's the same thing. Even if you may have finished your studies at the moment and you're looking for a job, you won't start the graduate scheme early because they have very specific intakes. You'll wait until that intake, usually, as I say, in the autumn time. But I will just say there are some schemes which do take students on a rolling basis. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But on the whole and in the main, they're quite specific recruitment cycles and they're very structured, hence the name, the graduate scheme.
Can I just jump in here and say that correctly so, a lot of the very good ones, schemes are released now and will be closing quite quickly, but there are probably 300 or 400 schemes that you can choose from. I put a good link in the chat box. It gives you, apologies for that noise, it gives you details of schemes and deadline days. Please be aware, if they give a deadline date for the 5th of August, 5th of March next year, once they have reached their amount of grads they want to see, they will close. So don't rest on your laurels and think, oh, I've got to the 5th of March. Often you haven't. but it will give you an indication that there are a great many, and there are also a great many that are rolling and that are open all the time. So some of the ones that we're going to show you shortly will be closing quite quickly, but there are hundreds more.
Okay, so just continuing on from that in terms of what type of graduate schemes are available. So as I said, they're often in specific job sectors, but there are plenty of options to choose from. And I think people often will feel that just because, you know, it's a bank that are offering the graduate scheme, they'll only have finance roles. That really isn't the case. Graduate schemes are really broad in a sense that they have them in the following sectors, as you can see on screen, but the likelihood is the roles and the graduate programs that they're looking to recruit for are just within these type of sectors. So some of the roles, as you can see, finance, all the major banks, including those big four accounting firms, they'll have graduate schemes, but finance specialists are also in demand across other sectors. So for example, you might go and work in media or advertising, or you might go and work in another creative industry, for example, but they're looking for finance specialists for their role. So it's really important when you look for these schemes, you're not just limiting yourself to just those obvious organizations, and really look and think outside the box. And if you think, for example, there's a company that you admire, or there's a shop that you always go to, or there's an online platform that you use a lot of the time, have a look on those type of websites and look on their career pages, because they may well have a graduate scheme. And you might think, oh, great, well, I didn't know I could be an accountant at Amazon. So have a look at these things, and you'll be able to see that there's a whole lot more out there than you know that you'd originally look at by just looking at the basics. Yeah, healthcare, for example, you've got the NHS Management Graduate Scheme. So that is if you're looking to become a manager within the healthcare sector. So again, it's not working in nursing, or it's not working as a doctor. It's actually working in kind of a business type position, but within the NHS. HR, again, HR pretty much exists across all organizations and sectors. So have a look there. You know, you might end up at an engineering firm, then they might have a HR graduate program. So it's really important, as I say, just to think outside the box and have a look for as many organizations as possible, because the likelihood is, again, similarly with IT, again, you know that IT is going to be across pretty much all walks of industry. Marketing media is an incredibly popular route. You've got employers like the BBC, Sky, Virgin Media, so the sexy employers, shall we say. And what you'll find there is that, again, they will have roles in finance, they will have roles in HR, they will have IT, they may have customer service. So take a little look through the different sectors, and you'll find things which, as I said, you may not be aware of previously. Just a note on hospitality, transport and tourism. I think we all know that the pandemic has brought with it a hell of a lot of challenges for those three areas this week alone. Many airlines, hotels, road and railway firms, they offer those type of graduate schemes, but the likelihood is at the moment they may be, you know, delaying their recruitment slightly. They may have reduced their recruitment slightly, particularly some of the airlines. So the best thing to do is have a look, see what's available, and if there isn't anything available at this moment in time, don't think, oh well, that's the end of that, because, you know, times will improve and these organizations will bounce back. Hospitality, transport and tourism is probably the one area where you always know that there'll be a bounce back. So what you can be doing is starting to make contacts and think about your experience level in relation to what you could do and apply for those type of roles in the future.
I've certainly noticed, getting ready for this presentation, that the last sector that Jack covered, a lot of the companies are putting things on hold, but they are asking you to register your interest. So don't completely shy away, like Jack says. Have a look, and you'll probably find with most of them you can register interest. So as soon as those schemes become available, your details are there, and they'll alert you and they'll let you know. And also, I know we're coming on to it later, but on LinkedIn, make sure you're following those big players if you're interested in grad schemes or working for those particular companies.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. So yeah, where do I find a graduate scheme? So I would usually always advise, if you are looking for a graduate scheme and you have a specific company in mind, that you start off with the company website. So many people will go straight to Indeed and just look for all the different schemes, and they'll click a load of them, and you're not really interested in many, but you just want to have a look through. That's fine, because it will give you an idea of what's out there. But if you're quite targeted in your search and you're quite passionate about a certain organization, after doing some research, start off with the company website, because what you'll find is all the information you need about their specific program, the organization itself, the company culture, the company values. And by doing that, you're already starting to understand what that organization is all about. So when it comes to applying for their scheme, you'll have a lot more information and knowledge at the center. Whereas if you do a bit more of a scattergun approach and you just, ping off a load of applications for grad schemes, the likelihood is you may not know so much because you haven't spent enough time on their website and you've just seen it and thought, well, I better apply for that one because it's a grad scheme. As we'll come on to, they're quite lengthy processes, the applications. So it's really important to try and do a little bit of research and plan for the grad scheme you want to apply for. And you'll be wise to kind of follow them on social media before even submitting your application, so you can get a feel and flavour for what they're all about. They often share lots of tips as well through their recruitment channels through social media. So it's really a useful way to start your search.
Well, I think partnering with what Jack said, smart working, using your time effectively and not overwhelming yourself, because if you overwhelm yourself by doing the scattergun approach, you'll actually become demotivated. So work smartly, focus on what it is you like, do a little bit of research and work smartly and don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like anyone, you want to know what's out there as a whole, because that's what we would all do. So the websites that are on screen at the moment will give you that opportunity to see the type of graduate schemes that are open. But what I would then say is, right, well, I've now made a note of 5 companies that I really like the look of, and I'm now going to go to their website and I'm going to learn a lot more about that scheme. And I might watch some of the videos from current graduates describing their experience, and I'll do all that. And then I'm going to decide, right, they're the 2 or 3 that I'm now going to invest my time in to apply for. And that approach is far greater than if you were to just apply for as many as possible and try to get them off as quickly as possible. We're here to help, as I said. So if you think, right, well, they're the 3, and you email MDXworks one day and say, right, I want to apply for DHL, Hermes, and the Royal Mail as their graduate schemes, because I just love the post, we will be able to support you with your application for each of those. Whereas if you say, I want to apply for a graduate scheme, as some people have in response to the email that we sent out this week, obviously the question Wendy and I would likely ask is, yeah, can you elaborate a little bit, please, and tell us what you want to apply for, because there's a few out there. So targeted, smart working, as Wendy says, is really important when it comes to applying for a grad scheme. Check out the Times Top 100 Graduate Employers. So they're the companies that are consistently reviewed very positively in relation to graduate recruitment. You might have a look through, you can read the reviews of the different companies, and you might think, actually, I really like the sound of that from a company culture perspective. So that might be one on my list. But research is the key.
Can I just interject here? We've had a question, what opportunities are available for business management students? That's a very, very broad question, something that you will be best advised to research yourself in the first instance. But my advice, and I'm sure Jack, being very learned, will add to this, just to cover this question off now, is to use a website called Prospects. And there is a section on Prospects where you can find a tab that says, what can I do with my degree? You'll then select business management, and it will then give you some fantastic suggestions. So I think that is your starting point for that particular question, in my opinion. I don't know if Jack has anything else to say there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the research, as I just said, is key to this. I think a lot of people think business management, and the only thing that comes into mind is, well, I can either be a member of business or I can be a manager. But business management is such a broad subject area, and there's so many things that you could do with business management within, the more formal settings that you may think of, like banks and corporate settings. But actually, a business management degree could lead you to working in a small publishing house, for example, but doing a specific business development type role within that organization. So it's really important that you do the research that's required. So use things like Prospects and use things like LinkedIn to network with individuals who have studied these degrees, and look at the type of roles that are available. Lots of grad schemes will say the type of discipline that they may be looking for in terms of degree, but the majority will probably actually be quite broad and say, any degree program is suitable. So it's not a case of saying this is a business management program. It's more a case of you looking at that program and thinking, is that right for me, based on my interest, based on my experience, based on my passion for a different type of role.
Arham, I've just put in the link in Prospects for you to have a look at.
So yeah, when it comes to application and entry requirements, and this is why we say that it's so important to research, it's a lengthy screening process if you apply for a grad scheme. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy and you'll fly through it in an hour. You have to put the work in, and you have to be proactive and dedicated to actually sending off the application. And it requires probably, multiple drafts of certain stages that you go through. So therefore, as I've said here, resilience, grit, determination, and perseverance are some of the qualities that you'll need to possess to even apply for a graduate scheme. It sounds like those are the type of qualities you'll need to secure a position, but actually, just to apply, sometimes you'll need to show those qualities. But they're the skills that we're hearing back from employers quite consistently now that they're looking for. Particularly in the current circumstances of the pandemic, these are the type of qualities that people are going to need to show a hell of a lot more. And by going through a lengthy application and screening process, you'll already starting to show how you've done that. And the likelihood, as I say here, is once you're on the scheme, you're going to need to show even more. So it's a habit to get into, but it's a positive habit to get into.
If I can just add to that, the screening process will involve the recruiter, the employer, looking through a lot of grad applications, and it's very easy, and I speak from experience some years ago, to quickly cast aside those people that haven't made the effort. So for the recruiter, for the screener, if you haven't made the effort, it's very easy. It's a great way of discounting people. So if you're going to do it, we can't impress upon you enough. Take the time to do it properly. Set aside time. A day out of your life is nothing if you're going to go on to secure a great grad role.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can see on the screen, some of the typical stages of the recruitment process. So usually you'll start with an online application. Fewer and fewer organizations are using CV cover letter screening as a part of the application process. That may exist, but not on many. Most of the time it'll be an online application form. And then you'll go through what are usually, I suppose, the biggest culling mechanism that most graduate schemes use, for want of a much nicer word, where online psychometric tests, where many people fall down at the graduate scheme and graduate application stage. And that's where they are able to sieve out lots of candidates at that stage and then focus on those from the interview stage onwards. So really important that those online psychometric tests, you have an understanding of what they are and you have a real knowledge of how to undertake them, and you take some time to complete those so you get better and better at them. But we'll come on to that in a moment. Usually then you might have a video or a phone interview. They're very common. And if you pass that stage, that's when you'll probably end up at a final stage. So a final stage will usually be an assessment day for most graduate schemes, but it may be a face-to-face interview. It may be an assessment day and then a face-to-face interview for those who are particularly brutal. But yeah, as I said, it's a lengthy process, and the main thing to know is if you want to apply for a scheme, you have to understand that this takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of resilience and that determination to succeed. And just because you get knocked back from one or two doesn't mean that they'll all knock you back. And many people who are on graduate schemes at the moment, I've heard from over the years, and they say, I applied for 10, 15 very tailored applications, but I wasn't the right fit for that particular scheme. So if you're really passionate about getting onto one, you have to, take those setbacks and make some changes to how you do things, maybe in certain cases, and you'll certainly get your reward at the end. And just a note here, so while graduate programs, generally expect candidates to have a 2-1 or higher, there are more and more employers who are becoming more flexible with that. So more organisations, including the NHS Graduate Management Scheme, they'll accept candidates with a 2-2. So usually it's 2-2 and above in terms of grad schemes. And more organisations nowadays have their eyes on institutions like Middlesex because they know that you have so much quality to bring to the table. And just because we don't necessarily have, that Oxford, Cambridge background of some of the other graduates that come out, they know that in terms of experience and in terms of some of the life lessons that you've got, actually that's going to be far more rewarding for their organisation than someone who may have been very, very institutionalised and just studied all their life and done little else than sit in the library. So the degree is a really important part of this, but actually some of the things that you're doing alongside your degree are equally important. So when you come to applying for a graduate scheme, it's so important that you give them as much about you and your unique experience as possible, but make sure you relate that to how it will fit for the program and the role that you've applied for.
Jack, one of our participants has asked, what is an assessment day? In summary, I would say an assessment day is a further opportunity for the employer to screen you. It's an opportunity to have 10, 20 people either in the office or remotely by a webinar. And during the assessment day, various things we carried out, a group assessment, a group task, a presentation. It depends on who you're going to as to what they include in the assessment day, but I would consider an assessment day as the employer's opportunity to get a group of you together and to see you all at once and to make effective use of their time. I don't know whether you agree or disagree with that, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that key stage where they almost put you in a simulation environment to see how you would work with other people, you know, in a similar level and a similar role type. So the likelihood is you'll go through a series of activities at an assessment day. So you might do a group task where you get an hour to work on a particular challenge that are set, and they'll assess you against how you work with others. You may have to attend an interview at an assessment day as part of the day itself. And you may have to do a presentation as well. So there's lots of different things that could happen on an assessment day, but the main ones that we find are things like that. So always usually a group task, possibly a presentation, and more than likely you'd have to do a presentation on the industry or something about the sector. And then you may have to do some kind of situational judgment test as well as part of that. And then an interview is also a likely component. So again, if it wasn't long enough up until then, it's another long day. You know, some of these assessment days start at 10 and finish at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So preparation again is so important for knowing what they are. And on MDXworks.com, you'll find loads of resources related to all of these things. So if you want to understand what an assessment center is, or assessment day, whichever you want to call it, there's a guide to help you with understanding all the different components of an assessment center, how you would prepare for each, with relevant links to take you off where you can learn a whole lot more around how to, you know, maximize your chances if you were to attend an assessment center.
There are also on YouTube some live videos that have been taken at assessment days, so you can go look. I saw one yesterday or the day before when I was researching this webinar. Barclays Bank have put up on YouTube one of their assessment days. You see the participants during the day, and then you see the Barclays staff assessing and deciding, determining who's done well in that day. So it might be worth a little look on YouTube too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much resource out there. And I always say this whenever I speak to any students, we find the resources that we find that we share with you by hitting into Google most of the time. You know, we type in assessment center resources into Google, and I think that's not beyond anyone. So if you do want to find out some more resource about these things and you need some extra resource and you don't find what you need on mdxworks.com, but I hope you will, you know, just tap into Google. There's so much out there. As Wendy says, organizations are being far more liberal in the way that they're sharing materials around these things for transparency. So to take a little look and see what you can find. Yeah, tips for applications. I mean, we could probably have done about 50 pages of tips for applications because there's so much really that we would advise. So what I would say is I'm going to go through a few of these, but if you do want to apply for a graduate scheme, the tips should come from a one-to-one with your faculty employability advisor, because we want to help you through every step of the process. So if you say, right, I've done the application, so I've now got my psychometric test stage, can you point me in the right direction of resources? We can do that. Here's my online application that I'm writing with a personal statement. Can you review that? You know, I've been invited for a telephone interview now. Can I have a mock interview? Can we do that? Right, the assessment center's coming up. Let's go through some of the things that may come up. So it's a step-by-step process that we want to help you with, and you can reach out to us for help with that alongside using the resources that are available. But just to pick out a few key ones here, I think the main one for me is the first bullet point. You know, to maximize your chances in this process, you really need to be clued up on the applications and job and interview methods that are being used by employers. So graduate recruitment has a very specific type of interview. Often competency-based is quite common, but strength-based interviews are being used more and more. And you may say, oh, what are they? And this is what I mean about doing the level of research online. We've got all of the guides and resources to help you learn about these things. It's just about investing some time in your week to think, okay, well, I'm now going to spend half an hour reading about interviews, and then I'll get a little bit of learning from that. And then I might say, actually, I fancy doing a mock interview off the back of this, and you can get in touch with us and we can do that. But you can also look at things like Target Jobs and Glassdoor, which have reviews from candidates and students who may have gone through the process, where they will review the kind of application and interview process for certain organizations. So they could say, right, well, I attended an interview with Deloitte and this is what they did. And you'll get a little bit of a feel for what you need to prepare for. Just general advice and guidance can be found on things like target jobs and prospects, and we've got some useful links for you on this at the end. But you'll be able to find the type of commonalities in graduate recruitment. So it's really important to get to grips with those, and then obviously ask some specific questions of your faculty advisor or a member of the MDXworks team. I think Wendy mentioned this, applying early. Yes, a lot of them have deadlines between November and December for programs that start the following summer and autumn, but actually some of them sometimes close early because of the amount of demand. The rolling ones often close early because of demand. So if you see a scheme and you think, I want to apply for that, don't think, but I'll do it next week. It has to kind of come quite naturally and quite quickly, because it's the only way you'll be able to apply and without that shutting when you don't think it will. Only apply for the graduate schemes you want to do. Absolutely. I think we went through this earlier, really. That was my point. If you're going to do a bit of a scattergun approach, you're not going to get into the level of detail and give the level of understanding that you need to show in your application and interview. So really important that you don't submit those generic applications. They're very specific and they're very tailored to the organization that you're applying to and the program that they're offering. If they're offering a HR program, you need to really show them that you've got a passion and understanding for HR, as well as, Amazon, for example.
I think, as we said earlier, aside from overwhelming yourself by applying for too many schemes, you'll also become quite fatigued and tired. And again, speaking from experience back in the past, you can kind of tell when somebody's rushed it or they can't be bothered or bothered enough. So it really is important that you do invest the time wisely.
Yeah. And that's the same for the company itself. So, extensive research into the employer and the sector as well. Lots of these interviews that happen nowadays, they'll be asking you, who are our competitors? What's happening, in fintech at the moment that you know about. And it's really important that you understand that the sector that you're applying to, as well as just the organization and the role. So we've got some really good resources. So again, for MDXworks, you can go off to some databases, which you can type in a certain sector or you can type in a certain company, and it will give you a bit of an analysis of that sector at the moment and who the key players are in the sector and what's the finances looking like across the industry. If you're applying to a certain organization, you can sometimes type those in. So for example, if you type Tesco into one of the databases, you might get a SWOT analysis of Tesco. So what are their strengths, weaknesses, and what opportunities and threats are there for Tesco at the moment? You go into an interview with that type of knowledge and armed with that know-how, you'll certainly impress an employer. But as we keep saying, it has to come back to how much you want it and how much research you're willing to put in, because it isn't an easy process.
I think the thing to bear in mind, that these are lengthy processes and you might think, oh God, I can't be bothered. But what I'd ask you to think about is you've taken a 3 or possibly 4-year degree. That's a lot of time out of your life. And it's a lot of money that you or your parents or somebody spent or the banks lent you. Put it in perspective. 365 days times 3 years or times 4 years against one day where I'm stuck indoors, it's nothing. It's really, really worth looking at it that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to help you with that on the right-hand side, be organized, create that Excel document with the grad schemes that you're interested in, the closing dates, the application processes, and kind of tick them off and monitor them and when you're hoping to hear back from each of them. And by doing that, it becomes more of a manageable process and it almost becomes like an extension of your academic study. So you think, well, actually that I do my modules, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but actually on a Monday between 1 and 5, I do my graduate schemes. That's my clear set agenda. And that way you'll find that it's just part of your study week and it should become a logical stage of your day-to-day life at Middlesex.
Yeah, it'd be part of your routine. And I think the more you get into this and the more you research and the more you apply, the greater your confidence will be. You'll feel filled with more confidence once you understand about strength-based questions or what a psychometric test involves. Knowledge is power. If you've got no knowledge, it's scary. But once you start to understand these things, you will feel a lot better for doing it.
Absolutely. I'm just going to pick one or two more out of here because I'm mindful of time and we want to certainly get some more questions in. But the one on the left here, so have an up-to-date professional identity, is really important. And this can combine with tidying up your online presence at the bottom. So things like your LinkedIn profile, or if you have a website, or if you have any social media profiles, making sure that they're as professional as possible before you apply for any jobs. So many organizations now will be screening you through things like LinkedIn in the first instance, but they'll also look on your Facebook. They might look on, your Instagram page if it's a public. And if you've shared anything questionable, during your student days, which I mean, I certainly would have done, you need to make sure that you need to get rid of those things, because an employer will look at it and think, actually, I'm not sure we want them in the business. And it could be the most innocent thing in the world, and usually it is, but you've got to think about what that looks like for the business if they take someone on who shared, even if it's just like a silly video, which, as I said, would have probably been in my case. So yeah, have a little look on your online identity and try and clean that up, and we'll help you with that as well. So things like your LinkedIn profile, we can review that for you, give you tips on how to make sure you've got a compelling profile that an employer will look at when it comes to the screening process. And just one final thing on all of this, I think Wendy said this, don't overdo it, basically. Times are a bit strange, to say the least, at the moment, and you need to find the right balance between the work, the study, the applications, and make sure that your own well-being is always, the primary concern. There will be deadlines and there will be hard work, and often it's going to be worth investing the time. But as I said, do it in a sense where it's manageable. So actually schedule it into your week, as opposed to just thinking, I've got too much here, I've now got to do the load of grad schemes after a day of study. Try and make sure that you find the routine that works for you. Just a few additional tips on graduate job hunting more generally. So if you are going to be looking at grad schemes, but you also might look for just more general graduate roles, little tips for both things: follow the companies that you want to work for on social media, as we said. So go onto LinkedIn and follow them and connect with them. Try and connect with some people who may be working there as well. You might find that, there might be a Middlesex alumni, for example, who's working in the organization, and you could just maybe reach out to connect with them and say, oh, I couldn't help but notice you've now gone on to work, at KPMG as in the legal role. I'm really interested in that type of thing. Have you got any kind of tips on how I could approach the application process? And try and build a rapport with those type of people, as opposed to just, logging on and saying, I don't suppose you've got any jobs, or can you help me with my job application? Try and make a common link there. But you'll also get some fantastic news, insights and tips just by following those companies. And when it comes to interview, and when it comes to the recruitment process, by following them, there'll be something you can draw out from just simply following them on a social media page.
Additionally, with that in mind, when you're following somebody, very often the interviewers have a LinkedIn account and they'll be looking you up, and then they'll see that you've looked at them and they like that. So it's a buy-in. If you're following them and you've taken the time, I know I'm being interviewed by Jack Timms and I know he works for Unilever, I'm going to take a look at him. The likelihood is that Jack would have taken a look at you on LinkedIn. So it really does work in your favour.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that you're proactive and you actually care for starters. So yeah, great advice there, Wendy. Registering with a graduate recruitment agency. If you're not too sure about how to work with agencies, again, we've got some resources on MDXworks.com, but sometimes some of the big organizations will outsource their recruitment to an agency, and by being signed up with a certain agency in a certain field, they may put you forward for a certain graduate role or a scheme. So really important to work with graduate recruitment agencies, but only if you are working with them. So actually staying in touch regularly and making sure that they're working for you. Some people will just sign up and leave it at that. And so again, have a chat with your FEA, because we can certainly make you understand how to work with an agency for your own benefit. So Wendy's just going to talk to you about some schemes that are currently open, just to give you an overview of some of the deadlines of some of these. And I should just say before that she does kick off, this really is just scratching the surface. This is what we found in probably, an hour. There's so much more there. So as I said, invest the time to look, because there'll be lots of schemes that are open at the moment, which, not even we've found at the moment.
Over to me. Okay, as Jack said, this is scratching the surface. I put a link in the chat box for Bright Networks. I sourced a lot of these from there, but you just need to type graduate schemes 2021 into your Google search bar and you're going to get a massive amount of results. Again, we keep saying this and I'm sorry for boring. You've got to invest time in looking at each of these carefully because some of them are quite intuitive and you can look through them very easily and some are a little bit clunky. Anyway, just a quick whiz through. Most of these are closing quite soon. We've been asked in the chat box, and Jack, I'm hoping you're going to concur with what I'm about to say. Our international students, some of these schemes are open to international students. You will see it if you look in the FAQs. Sometimes you have to dig for this information, but it's there. Some of the graduate schemes that we've listed are taking on international students, but on the basis of merit. So there's no guarantees for international students, but you can apply. And if you're a strong candidate, then they will, of course, sponsor you. So just to give you the heads up that those opportunities are still there. And for people whose visas, and I'm hoping Jack's going to concur with me here, if your visa's expiring on a certain date, if you've got your application in pre that visa date, and they choose to see you, and say your visa expires in May of next year, and they choose to see you and you get through the process and you get taken on, they're prepared to sponsor you, then that's fine. Your visa is going to be converted, you're going to be allowed to stay. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so with these schemes, a lot of them, I'm looking at a Word document I created that helped Jack create that particular slide there, that they are offering many, many types of disciplines. It's not just as you think, like BAE systems. I think that's sort of electronic-y, radar-y, aeroplane. That would be in my mind's eye. It's not that way at all. There's business, there's science and tech, there's all sorts in all these schemes, and fantastic structure. For example, BA, they will take on students or graduates, should I say, that get a 2-2. Same with the Treasury program, they'll take on students that get a 2-2. BAE, going back to internationals, don't appear to take on international students, but PricewaterhouseCoopers, for example, do. Some of these systems have various intakes, so if you miss this particular cutoff, you can, as Jack said earlier, go apply for these. Generally, the salary on all of these is really quite decent. For most of these I've looked at, you're looking at 25, 26 upwards. Some of the schemes require you not to work in London. Depends how much you want to work for a particular business, like Dyson. You may or may not want to work for Dyson. You know, that scheme is not in London, it's in Wiltshire, but again, fantastic scheme. So these are things, when you go to look at it, all you need to invest in the first instance, just for these few, is 15 minutes per scheme, and have a wander around the web page and see what are the minimum requirements. Can I, as an international student, apply for this? Can I use my information business systems degree to work at Deloitte? Because isn't Deloitte like a finance tax company? Isn't it like a management consultant company? Would I be able to use my IT degree? Yes, you can. But if you don't know that, as I said earlier, knowledge is power. If you don't know it, don't worry. You just research it, you go look, and then you do know. So be sure, you know, to look around all these. Just whizzing down the list here. For example, Babcock. I don't know how far down it is. It's about halfway down on the slide that Jack's put up there. Fantastic graduate programs there. I was astonished. There's 25 different programs with about 4 sub-programs within those 25 programs, and they cover a multitude of disciplines. So I'd highly, highly recommend that you look at that. With Babcock in mind in particular, that they're not giving a closing date, they're just saying it'll close when we're full. So that's what Jack and I would call a rolling scheme. Unfortunately, it would appear that there are no international students taken on by Babcock. But for those of you that are EU or UK, I would strongly suggest that you do look at that. Airbus, for example, that's the next one down. Many, many different schemes there. Fantastic pay, mainly looking at taking on science and tech students, and we'll consider taking on international students. AstraZeneca, fantastic company and doing so much good work at the minute with the COVID pandemic. Again, they're considering taking on tier 2 to convert to tier 4. And again, some fantastic programs. Again, with this one, it's a rolling one. They're closing in December, but they will close earlier if they get the applications that they're looking for. A lot of these schemes, without going through each single one, you'll find that if they're the big names, and we've tried to select the big names, if you're an international student or an EU student, you think, do you know what? I either don't think it's going to work for me, I'm not going to be sponsored, so I'm not going to put the effort into this particular application, I don't want to work for this company. Don't be disheartened, because a lot of these companies have presence across the globe. So you can still apply whilst in the UK, whilst studying at Middlesex. We're going to help you, but you're going to apply for a role in Singapore, for example. So some of these very, very big names are global companies, so well worth applying for. The last one on the list, and I'm just going to skip to this, is the Transform Society. really worth looking at that link there. I think we're covering off police now, teaching programs, mental health, social work for mental health issues. What were the other two, Jack? Police, social work, teaching. You're mute.
Yes, sorry. So yeah, there's mental health, social work, there's teaching,
Police.
there's policing, there is prison and probation services, and there's one other as well. But they're all dedicated to public service and public sector.
I would say well worth looking at again. It goes across the whole board with those particular programs that they're offering out there. But all of these programs are closing. I have to tell you pretty quickly. So if you go away today and think I really fancy that, find the time today or tonight to make that initial application. A lot of them, as Jack said, aren't actually requiring a CV or a cover letter. They're just either registering your interest or asking you to submit some kind of supporting statement. So take the time this evening, if that's closing today or tomorrow, to get that first part over the line. Don't rush it. Today ends at midnight tonight. Whilst we're telling you to manage your time carefully, if something really leaps out, I think it's worth going to bed a little bit later than normal. And again, as I said, and I just want to reiterate this because I'm looking at my own notes here, some of the stuff is really quite buried on these sites. If there are particular questions you want to find out, i.e. about being sponsored as an international, possibly even an EU question, do wander around, do look. And again, Jack and I were saying, look on Glassdoor, look on Student Room, look on Indeed for reviews on graduate schemes here. A simple Google gets you the answers as well. Interview process, assessment process, Marks and Spencer's graduate scheme review, and you will find that people have fed stuff in, and you're going to get back all the detail you need. But for these ones, yes, they close very soon, but there are many, many, many more. If you look on that Bright Network link, that are going to be in December, January, February, March, and then the ones that are always ongoing. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the actual schemes themselves. Covered off briefly the international situation. That if it is open to international students, get your application in before the deadline closes. And by virtue of doing that, if you get to interview stage and you're offered the role, then it's fine, you're in. At least they're not closing the door on you at the very first instance. I think that is pretty much it. There's tons out there. I think that's what I want to keep reiterating. There's tons out there. We've just given you a snapshot of what's around at the moment. These are the ones that are closing pretty soon, but there's lots and lots.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Wendy. So yeah, just a couple more slides to go on this. One is around LinkedIn, and then there is a specific slide for those asking around international students, and just a little bit of information for you guys as well, because I know that can be quite confusing in a lot of the process. So first and foremost, LinkedIn. I think we've already mentioned it a couple of times, but LinkedIn is hugely invaluable. As I said, if you are a student or a graduate, or any professional really, you should be on LinkedIn. It's as important as your CV would be. And everyone kind of thinks, well, I need to have a CV, but I would almost say a LinkedIn profile is almost where I'd start nowadays, because through that LinkedIn, you've got access to not only, as it says here, 6.5 million jobs and 700 million members, but so much information and resource and knowledge just at the click of a button. Your CV can't give you that. It's just a page of information about you. Whereas LinkedIn, if you use it proactively, you can follow companies that you might want to go and work for. You can connect with people who might be doing a job role that you're already in and ask them questions about their job role. You can just look at people's profiles and see how their careers worked. They might have been studying accounting and finance. What did they do to get work experience before they ended up on the grad scheme with Deloitte? Whatever it may be, it's so important to use LinkedIn as a proactive resource and tool for your career and job search. We've got so many resources around LinkedIn now. And as you can see, there's also a link which they've put together, which is organizations who are currently hiring in the UK. And that's broken down by sector as well. There's so much knowledge and resource there. But again, it's about doing the research and spending the time to look for all of the stuff about LinkedIn and what it has on offer. MDXworks.com's got various different guides on using LinkedIn and creating a profile. We've got lots of different tools to help you to network proactively. Online networking is going to be a real thing of the norm now. How do you reach out to people through things like LinkedIn without, just saying, can I have a job? It needs to be quite targeted and tailored, and it needs to be quite mindful in the way that you approach an organization or an individual. But if you get it right, if you would come to apply for a graduate scheme or a graduate role and you've already been speaking to a recruiter, or you've already been speaking to someone who ends up on the interview panel, these things happen all the time. They know you, and that is going to be like gold dust for your interview, because they've already got a rapport with you and you've probably already impressed them enough to have that conversation back and forth a few times. But you have to know how to do it. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, and it's something that you can work on. And it's, as I said, it's why MDXworks exists, because we want to sit down with you and help you with that approach and get that approach right first time, so you can help create those connections, which can often lead you into a position, not through the back door, but in a way through the back door, because you've applied, but actually they know you already.
It's like fast
it's really
track.
important. Yeah.
The fast track here. If I can just quickly say, if you look on LinkedIn, whilst this isn't as tight as I'd want it to be, I've just put in graduate schemes on LinkedIn in London, and it's given 313 results. Now, I have to say it's not as tight as I'd want it to be, because some of them are just graduate roles, but a lot of those are graduate schemes. So in terms of using your time smartly, LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. And if LinkedIn couldn't get any better, you can probably tell Wendy and I like LinkedIn. It's now added a new component to its arm, which is LinkedIn Learning. So LinkedIn brought a platform called lynda.com, which has loads of courses which are pretty much dedicated to every single sector. And LinkedIn Learning, it now houses, over 16,000 business creative technology courses, where you can go and plug a skill gap, basically, or a knowledge gap. So if you see on a graduate scheme application, recruitment information, that they're looking for a specific skill, and you think, well, actually, I don't know if I do have advanced Excel, go onto LinkedIn Learning and you can do an advanced Excel course over a couple of weeks, and you can tick that one off, and that's your reference point for showing them that you went and plugged the gap. There's so many things that you can do on there. It's not just practical things as well. There might be things like management courses on there. It might be customer service. But if you spend the time thinking, well, what do I need for this specific program or graduate role that I'm applying for, and find a couple of courses through LinkedIn Learning to prove you have those skills and competencies, you're a far more credible candidate than somebody who may not have much work experience, and they're just saying, well, I do have those skills and I've got it from my part-time job. Whereas you could be someone who says, I've got it from my part-time job, but I also am a member of ABC societies, and I also attend these following extracurricular programs, and I also do these following LinkedIn Learning courses, and instantly you're a really well-rounded candidate and becoming an impressive potential hire for the organisation.
And with the LinkedIn Learning courses, you can actually prove that you've done that, because you can sync in your LinkedIn profile to the LinkedIn Learning account. So when you've completed your course on pivot tables or macros or business management style in a retail outlet, I've just made that bit up, but whatever. When you've completed that, you sync that to your LinkedIn. It will be synced to your LinkedIn profile if you set it up, so it's evidenced. And these days, a lot of people do want to see that you are, as Jack just alluded to, doing extracurricular stuff. You're using your time wisely to invest in your future, and in these strange times that you're doing everything you can to just be that little bit higher than the person that applied against you.
Yeah, absolutely. We say this in pretty much every webinar that we do, that your degree is fantastic, but by itself, it's not enough. It has to be some tangible stuff to go alongside it. And things like LinkedIn Learning are tangible and really important and sector specific a lot of the time. It's £30 a month normally if you want to have LinkedIn Learning. For Middlesex students, it's free. If you're here in, second year, or even if you're in your final year, you've got another kind of 7-8 months of this platform. So get yourself signed up. There's a link on there to take you through the sign up. We'll provide these slides afterwards, and you'll be able to complete a course. And we all know we're now in another lockdown. We've got 4 weeks of not being able to do a great deal, and a LinkedIn Learning course could be the perfect tonic. The question that's likely to come up from lots of graduate recruiters is, what did you do during the lockdown period, during the pandemic? And if you turn around and say, well, I've finished the Tiger King documentary and I also managed to watch Breaking Bad, that's not going to impress anyone. But if you say, okay, so I was attending webinars regularly around my sector, I engaged with these organizations through their own webinars, I also did these free LinkedIn learning courses, which I feel are relevant for this role because instantly there's a tick in the box. So have a little look at that, because yeah, so LinkedIn is becoming almost the one-stop shop for career at the moment in our eyes. So really important that you get yourselves on there. Okay. Right, we'll just quickly go through some of these tips around international students, because I know some of the questions have been quite specific in that, and then we'll just pick up a few of the last questions before we close. But yeah, if you are an international student, just some things that you do need to know if you are looking for a graduate job in the UK. So if you are either in the final year as an undergraduate, or even if you're on a postgraduate program, if you want to work full-time in the UK after you finish your course, there's two ways that you can get in. So graduate schemes is one, and direct entry is another. So we've been talking about graduate schemes today, but direct entry basically just means a graduate job. So if you're looking for a job which doesn't have training, a 3-year program attached to it, but the organization is willing to take you on. But in either case, you have to have access to an employer who is willing to take you on and sponsor you for a tier 2 visa. So that's the real deal breaker in this. The organization must be willing to take you on and provide that tier 2 sponsorship. Some of those graduate schemes which Wendy was talking about will consider that, and often it's case by case. If you can show them that you're going to be plugging a real gap in their business and you're a fantastic candidate, of course they want to take you on. Why wouldn't they? And on the right, there's some possible tier 2-4 sponsor schemes based on the ones that we pulled out. But just some current key points of tier 2 visa sponsorship. So it's about finding a job that's paid a certain salary or meets a certain criteria in terms of the role that you're doing. So I'm not going to get into too much details about government SOC codes, but actually when people assess what is a graduate level job, they will be looking specifically at your job title and your role and what you do. So it has to be of a graduate level or of a certain salary range. So when you're looking for jobs, if you're unsure about what would be a graduate job, again, get in touch with us. We can help you to look for the type of roles that are suitable. There's also a way to find out some organizations who do offer tier 2 sponsorship through the government website. So there's a link in here which will take you to a list of organizations who do offer tier 2 sponsorship already, but I'm not going to lie to you and say it's a really nice list. It's a horrible list. It basically just lists every single company in the UK who are able to offer tier 2 sponsorship, and on there you'll be able to go onto their website and see what they offer in terms of opportunities and careers. But there's no kind of really quick way of looking at what type of schemes are very specific for international students. Hopefully that will change. And obviously at the bottom there, the really great news is in the summer 21. So if you're graduating next year, there'll be a new 2-year graduate immigration route, which means you'll be able to stay and work in the UK for 2 years. And in certain cases, then you may get sponsorship beyond that period due to the work that you've done with an organization. So if the grad scheme was 2 years or a year, then yeah, you're laughing. That would be fantastic. So this isn't permanent, but at the moment, it's really important to just make sure that you do understand the things that are needed to be in place to secure a role. And if your visa, for example, ends in February of next year, because your course finishes in January, then your mindset would be on, well, I need to find a graduate job that recruits now, or that will be recruiting very, very soon. I won't be able to wait for a graduate scheme that's going to be recruiting in September next year, because my visa would have expired before that. So be quite targeted. When it comes to applying for roles as an international student, we often say, don't always rely on the grad schemes and the advertised roles. Show an organization that you're able to plug a gap for them by sending off some speculative applications. So again, do the same level of research that you would put into these type of things, but it might be finding organizations who don't offer a grad scheme, but they do offer jobs, and you can apply for the role, or you can send off a speculative application for something that may not even be advertised, and highlight the credentials and the talent and the experience that you can bring to the business. And we can help you with that. But it's really important that you kind of follow the stages in that sense, because if you understand how to work in the UK, as an international student beyond your degree, you'll actually find that it's quite a straightforward and simple process to apply for opportunities. But obviously what we don't want you to do is start submitting for grad schemes and then saying, actually, I wasn't even eligible for that one, because that's not a good use of your time, and we don't want that to be the case. So there's some links at the end of this which will give you some further information around applying for roles in the UK. And graduate level roles as well. So have a little look through those. And again, if you've got follow-up questions, we can certainly book a one-to-one appointment for you off the back of that.
In terms of all the schemes that we've spoken about today and those that are prepared to sponsor international students, we also have a partnership with a company called Student Circus, and they exclusively look for placements, internships and graduate roles with companies that are prepared to sponsor international students. So if you have a look at studentcircus.com, it's a very valuable site and quite reassuring, I think, for an international student that's looking for a great role in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And any questions that you have about, visa, immigration, sponsorship, we do have a dedicated visa and immigration team. So the link there will take you through, and you can book an appointment through that. Okay.
Looking at the Q&As.
My PowerPoint, Wendy, just seems to have crashed. So if you don't mind picking up some of those questions whilst I get that back.
Yeah, in the Q&As here, chat box I've dealt with as we've gone along. The visa, somebody asked, as my visa is valid until Feb 2021, are there schemes that hire before that? Depends where you are in the cycle of your study, I guess. Because if you were graduating next year, your visa would be later than that in 21. But if your studies are finishing before that and your visa is expiring in Feb 21, then you need to do the route that Jack described, which is looking for immediate grad hires, because all grad schemes now are recruiting for next year. So you're going to be looking for a graduate role that commences pretty shortly or early next year. I'm correct in saying, aren't I, Jack? If your visa is valid till Feb 21.
Yeah, so if the visa is valid till Feb 21, then you'll be looking to try and secure a role before February 21.
So it's the grad role that meets the SOC requirements and that or is paying over £20,800. The links that Jack supplied there, the HMRC links, the government links, is the best way to go about finding something speculatively, but it is rather clunky, but it's worth you investing the time in doing that, I would say. Somebody else asks, can you apply for graduate schemes having extended years of work experience for over 6 years work? What kind of graduate jobs are best suited for an experienced candidate on a postgrad course? Very difficult to answer that really sort of specifically to you, but my advice would be, if you're studying a postgrad course and you've got 6 years of work experience, you're in a very fortunate position. You just need to go away and decide what it is you want to do. So whatever it is you're studying, I would reference you back if you're at this stage thinking, I don't know what I want to do with my degree, I'd use the prospects link and look initially just to get the old grey matter going. What can I do with my degree? And it'll give you a great list of roles, and then that will start to fire off areas of interest. But yes, your degree and 6 years work experience should stand you in very, very good stead. There might be one more.
Yeah. And there will be some graduate schemes. They're not many of them explicitly saying we only take people, 2 years after graduation or up to 2 years. I think there used to be an issue with that with certain schemes, but now there's so much more flexibility in terms of recruitment. So if you see a scheme that you're interested in, and as Wendy says, you might think, well, I've actually got 6 years to bring to the table here, plus a postgraduate program, show them in your application you're the right candidate, and you'll be in with a good chance.
Another question here, are there any schemes for sport rehabilitation specifically? I'm just going to say yes, I'd imagine so, but I can't with my hand on my heart, so yes, there is. Again, you need to go away and do the research on that, and Google is our best friend. We're so lucky these days. Grad schemes, sport rehabilitation, or go to prospects and Google that degree and then see where it takes you. Don't just be blinkered with the word sports rehabilitation. There are avenues off of that. But yes, Google and prospects. And the last question I can see here, is the 2-year graduate sponsorship applicable for students graduating January 21?
No, so if you've graduated in 2021, looking at the information that we have, the eligibility only comes in if you've graduated in the summer of 21, because there's not an explicit date yet on when that's coming in. So if you've already graduated, and depending on when your visa expires, for example, the eligibility would be dependent on that. But at this moment in time, it will be next summer. So if you've graduated next summer and it comes in, before the visa expires, the chances are you can then apply for roles for up to 2 years. But the information and
sorry, Jack.
Advice is always up to date on those government websites, so do take a look.
And with January 21 in mind, it's the same answer as the February 21. You've got to start looking now for roles and use your time wisely to apply for appropriate roles that fit your requirements and employer's requirement. And if you get that wrong, you get that offer, then obviously you're going to be sponsored and you're fine. Where can I find these slides? They'll be made available.
We'll get them on MDXworks.com. Yes, so we've got a section on MDXworks.com, but also, by signing up today, we'll have an attendance list.
I'll get those out.
And we can ping out the slides to you directly to your email address as well.
I think that's it on the questions.
Okay. Brilliant. We'll run a little bit over, but that's fine because we're really pleased how many questions have come in, which is really good. On the screen at the moment, you can see there's some useful links there. So we've tried to categorize them. So you've got some specific ones around psychometric tests. So those type of things where if you apply for a grad scheme and you have to do like a situational judgment test or a numerical reasoning test or logical induction test, there's 5 or 6 different categories, but you'll be able to have a look through those and practice. Basically, that's the crux of it. We can't help you a great deal when it comes to psychometric tests because certain organizations will be looking for very specific responses. There's not necessarily a right and wrong answer to some of these, so you just need to practice and practice and practice, and you'll start to find the type of things that are commonly getting you through to that next stage. And as I said, try and look up different recruitment practices from different organizations because they may have some very specific details around their psychometric tests that they do. But sometimes knowing the culture and values of the business itself and really knowing that company inside out through research can sometimes help you with your psychometric tests, particularly like situational judgment, because the situational judgment, you might think, well, Aldi would do it like that, but Tesco are probably going to do it like that because I read something on their website. So that type of thing can sometimes come in quite handy. Applications, assessment centres and interviews. There's a whole load there. So have a look on the lowdown on graduate schemes. There's a podcast to follow up from today. There's an assessment centre tool through MDXworks.com. There's stuff around video and telephone interviews. Really important that you start to get to grips with video interviews because even when we come out of the pandemic, so many graduate recruiters are likely just to stick with video interviewing. It's such an efficient and effective way for them to screen candidates without having to put resource into that on their dedicated site. So really important to do a video interview and practice them. As I said, email us, say, I want to do a video interview for this grad scheme, and we'll have to put one together. Make us busy is what I'm saying to you.
Somebody asked, I think, final question now, are there any graduate schemes that come straight to MDXworks to be exclusively advertised to our students? We have relationships with many companies and they ask us to promote their opportunities. So yes, do check out and do register for alerts within the MDXworks jobs section of the portal. These are likely in truth to be shared with other universities. So it's not exclusive that they're only going to take on Middlesex students, but by virtue of coming to us, they are wanting to take on a particular type of student that's had a particular type of experience that studies in a busy London university. So it's worth certainly signing up and getting job alerts on the jobs board on mdxworks.com. And previously in the chat box, I did give you a little quick YouTube link showing you how to do it, but Jack also within these slides has detailed how to sign up. It's dead easy and we will be sharing the slides afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we've got some bits through about LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning. So you can sign up to LinkedIn Learning through that library guide link. You can learn more about how to use LinkedIn through the other two as well. As I said, there's some content for international students on the right-hand side. Some bits about how to work and live in the UK beyond graduation, and also some specific government advice as well. And also, just to finally, we've put there, if some of you didn't make it to Gradstock this year, we've got the 4 days worth of content from Gradstock. Many of organizations who came to talk about graduate opportunities in their businesses, you can have a look through there, and there may be an organization that you think, actually, I wouldn't mind applying to them. And you'll have a video there with some dedicated tips, advice, and guidance about their business. So a bit of again, some knowledge that you may not have got from looking at their website alone. So yeah, check out some of the Gradstock footage as well.
I will, as Jack said a little while ago, take a look at the attendance list and send out all the slides, LinkedIn access, any other bits and pieces I think will be helpful to you, LinkedIn guides. I'll probably get that done early next week out to you all.
Great, thanks, Wendy. So yeah, if there aren't any other questions, this will bring the session to a close. But we want more questions. Is my message to you. Send us them through to MDXworks, the email address, or give us a call, or try and book an appointment online and ask some follow-up questions. As Wendy said, some of these schemes are closing quite soon. So if you want to apply, we suggest you get in touch off the back of this and say, I saw this scheme and I'd like to apply for it. Can I book an appointment? And we'll get the ball rolling with that. But really big thank you to everybody for attending. By attending today, you've shown that you're invested in your career. And hopefully what you've realized today is it's going to take a lot of work and a hell of a lot of effort and grit and resilience and determination, but you've got a fantastic support team in MDXworks who will help you every step of the way. No question is stupid and no ask is too much when it comes to applying for jobs and making kind of career decisions for the future. So yeah, thank you again. Do get in touch. We look forward to hearing from you all soon. We'll be doing another pop-up next week on Tuesday around applying for teaching, and then there'll be every Tuesday and Thursday until the end of term, basically. So hopefully we'll see some of you again at some of those. In the meantime, yeah, keep safe, keep well. It's strange times for everyone, but we'll all come through this. And yeah, hopefully at the end of this, you'll be in a shiny new graduate job, and we can all be pleased with that. So yeah, we'll see everyone soon and take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.